everyone. Hello to all of our members from around the world. I am Jamila. I'm the head of House Foundations at Soho House, our social responsibility program. I'm here today on a gorgeous autumn Wednesday in South London in Bermondsey with our global coffee partner Grind at their Roastery to understand a bit more about the ethics and values when it comes to the environment and the social impact of the coffee that they make here. I am joined today with Rudy, the head of training, and Howie, head of coffee.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks
Good
for coming.
to be here.
Can you just give a little bit of background about where we are right now?
Yeah, so we're in the Grind Roastery. This is the third version of the Grind Roastery. Started really small in Shoreditch, and as you can see, since then we've grown quite a lot. We've now got this massive shiny space, and it's looking pretty good today, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is where all the coffee production happens. And it is, as Howie said, a very big space, especially for a specialty coffee roastery. So it's great for us. And you can see all of these sacks at the behind us. Those are all green coffee sacks being imported from all over the world. Lots of interesting things happen here.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And you said this is your third roastery. So can you just tell us a little bit about how you guys got started and how you got to where you're at today?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Grind as a company started in 2011, started as a coffee shop over in Old Street, and it's kind of grown into what it is today. We've got branches around London. We have an at-home range, so we do retail, and we also sell to wholesale, so we sell to customers such as Soho House, for example. And we've actually just had our 10th year anniversary, so yeah, it's going well.
10 years.
10 years.
We survived.
Amazing.
Which is actually an achievement.
Yeah, there you go. And one of the reasons why we're so excited to be partnered up with you guys, we've been partnered for 2 years now, like I mentioned before, is because of the way you guys approach things like environmental impact, social impact, animal welfare when it comes to making coffee. You know, we have goals at Soho House to become a more sustainable business, and all of our members who are joining, by the way, if this is important to you too, connect with each other on the shop, because we want to really foster conversations around this. But so yeah, I'd love to hear, in the last 10 years, when did sustainability become such a big focus point for you guys?
Yeah, well, there's a lot to talk about in sustainability, and I'm really excited to share some of the things we've got for you. So yeah, like coffee and specialty coffee certainly has always been pretty sustainable, certainly for the last 20 years or so. I've been roasting coffee for 8 years now, and the importers that we work with have always been doing a good job, the ones that I've seen in the industry. But for the last 6 years, since we started roasting our own coffee and sourcing our own coffee, we had a really good chance to directly impact that process. And just through the farms we've worked with, and as we've grown, we've been able to do more and more, and hopefully we're going to tell you a bit about it. Very exciting.
Yeah, I think specialty coffee, the area of coffee, the coffee industry that Grind works in, it's always had a focus of sustainability in it involved. So we've been around for 10 years now, and we really got started during that wave of specialty coffee when it first kind of started to hit London and became really popular. So I think sustainability has always kind of been in our sights, and over the last few years we're really kind of trying to focus in on it and into the future as well.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's get into the nuts and bolts, or I guess like the nuts and beans.
Oh my
joke.
goodness.
Oh,
you went there. I'm in.
And talk about really, I guess, the beginning of the coffee journey for our house blend, right? So at the farms with the beans, what can you tell us about environmental impact, social impact, where, these beans are coming from?
Yeah. So very brief overview of coffee. It grows as a cherry on a tree. And inside the cherry, you've got some fruit, some flesh, kind of like a plum. And then inside that, you've got two little stones. They are the coffee beans. And that's what we want, and that's what we roast, and that's what you know as coffee beans roasted. And so the process of taking that cherry from the tree, taking all the fruit off, drying it, etc., that's where our journey starts, really, and that's where we start to get involved. And I think today what we'll mainly talk about is Brazil, which is what makes up all of the Soho House blend, and it's where we do most of our direct trade buying. We love Brazil.
We do, yeah. And it's not just because it's a popular coffee producing country. It's also because of the flavors that you find in Brazilian coffee, we think are just so delicious and accessible for pretty much any coffee drinker, someone who's been drinking coffee for 50 years or someone who's brand new to coffee. These flavors are kind of chocolatey and sweet and nutty. They work really well in milk, and that's the reason we love Brazil so much as a company, and that's the reason we go there all the time to get our coffee.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to go there in 2019, and I was due to go there in 2020 and 2021, but COVID, thanks for that, can't go. But we have a really nice direct trade relationship with a few farms in Brazil now. Through Soho House, we were lucky to increase our buying from there, which just means that we were able to help them out a lot in terms of keeping the production going while they were, struggling really with COVID because demand dropped a lot. And yeah, we're really lucky to work with guys that are really on the forefront of the agronomy, the science behind growing and production of coffee. And they're doing loads of good things to improve sustainability on the farms. For example, the fertilizer that they use there is actually all of the fruit that they take off the coffee beans. That is then produced into fertilizer that then fertilizes the ground for next year's crop. It's a really nice little circular economy thing going on there.
I think you also mentioned, or you've mentioned to me that they use horseback, for example, to move around the farm.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So instead of using vehicles and things, little things like that to stay as green as possible on these farms.
Yeah. They also give away large proportions of their farm to wild, just ecosystem to encourage.
Like rewilding and all that.
Yeah,
stuff,
essentially. Or it was never unwilded, but it's their land and they could just fill it with coffee trees and create a monoculture, which is bad for soil and bad for diversity of crops and for the birds and the insects that live there. So they plant lots of different crops around to just keep the diversity, which is really important.
And what about things like chemical use when it comes to farming in the coffee industry? I mean, is that something that you guys have to consider with the farms you're working with, or how do you mitigate that?
Yeah, I think, quite a few years ago, there was a lot of chemical use in coffee farming, especially in very large coffee farms for big, conglomerate corporations that buy a lot of coffee. They use, chemical fertilizers. They might use chemicals to decaffeinate the coffee beans for their decaf. Whereas grind, we always try and source from places. Well, we always source from places that don't use chemicals, basically natural fertilizers. Even, like I said, our decaffeination process for the beans, there are new methods such as the Swiss water method, which is basically a chemical-free way of decaffeinating your coffee. So, yeah, we've always got this in mind, and we always try to go chemical-free.
Yeah, the fertilizer that we talked about earlier, it's used basically in place of really bad, horrific fertilizers that people used to use in the 90s. And through research that they're doing at the farms, they're basically just reducing all of the use of this kind of thing. It's bad for the soil, but sometimes people have had a tough choice to make between fighting disease and keeping the soil, organic, or not using bad fertilizers. So it's always a balance, but they basically completely reduced it to, I think they use one spray very occasionally if they have to.
Great. I think that's such a important thing to say when people are talking about sustainability, is that no one in the world is going to make a 100% switch to everything overnight, and so many of the goals that are driving us by the UN Global Compact and all this are set for how can we continually decrease the harm to get to a place that's really good over the next decade or two.
It's like dieting. If you try and just go 100%, you're gonna lose it, and it's never gonna carry on. You gotta be slightly moderate and be sustainable with your sustainability goals as well. If you know what I mean.
100%. Another consideration, especially when we're working with global farmers, are the workers' rights that are involved, right? We see labels like fair trade. You guys mentioned direct trade. I mean, how do you know and feel confident that the people picking the coffee beans are treated to an ethical standard, to a high ethical standard?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, that's where the term direct trade really comes into play. What happens at Grind, and with a lot of the specialty coffee industry, is roasteries, such as the Grind Roastery, will have some kind of direct contact with the farms that we import our coffee from. That's what direct trade means. And through that, we can give you basically full traceability to where this coffee comes from. So we can tell you the altitude it's grown in, we can tell you the farm it's from, the lot in that farm, we can tell you the region of the country, the variety of the coffee bean, we can give you the farmer's name. We sometimes travel to these farms, and when we work with importers who import coffee into Europe, we use importers that also do direct trade with the farmers, importers that we trust. So through that, we can make sure that we're always getting coffee from places that has a good work standard for all of their employees, basically.
Yeah, the farms that we work with in Brazil actually house a lot of their workers on the farm. Luckily in Brazil, they do a lot of mechanical picking. Picking is traditionally a very underpaid and really tough job. So there's a lot less of that in Brazil, which is a good thing. And the workers that live on the farm get really great conditions. They get subsidized food, power, and there's this real... I mean, I've been there, and I know I'm like talking about this place that you haven't been to, but they really are happy and loving, and there's a real sense of community. Yeah. And it's really great to see. And it's great that we get to go there to actually make sure of that. And I actually chat with the farmers really regularly on Instagram.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, we're just friends. It's great.
That's great. You'll have to put some like handles of people who we can follow in the comments or something. Yeah.
You'll be jealous. You'll want to live there.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so you guys mentioned importers, right? And I guess that's like the second stop on the journey of creating the house blend. So getting the coffee beans from Brazil to Bermondsey, you know, are you flying it here? What are we doing? How are we looking at carbon emissions, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
You want to
Sure. So, so all of the coffee that is imported into Grind is shipped. So we don't use flights, we don't use aircraft to ship
like
our coffee beans. Exactly. So shipping, basically, in terms of CO2 level, it is better than flying coffee. So statistic that we read earlier was that shipping has 44 times less CO2 emissions compared to flying for the same shipment. So that's a statistic we can give you there. We also, the importers that we work with, also strive for sustainability themselves. So we know that we feel confident that those importers are using green practices when they import their coffee. That being said, shipping does come with CO2 emissions. It's unavoidable. Sometimes there are areas of the industry where there are emissions that are unavoidable. And it's not necessarily about completely cutting that out. Sometimes it's more about other things we can do in other areas to offset carbon emissions and become carbon neutral or even carbon positive. So
Yeah, the guys that import our coffee from Brazil, they're called Falcon Speciality, won a Guardian Sustainability Award a couple of years ago. Pretty cool. And they've just got some guys, some PhD students that they've employed. They're doing a full kind of carbon emission workout of the whole company, and their goal is to be, is it carbon positive or carbon negative? The good one.
Carbon positive.
Carbon
positive, I believe.
They're aiming to be there in the next 2 years, and they're already close to carbon neutral. So yeah, they are good guys that we trust, and they've been shipping for years. If we were to ship stuff directly ourselves, first of all, we'd get really bad rates, and we just don't know how to ship. So we leave that to the experts. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and when talking about carbon offsetting, so, you know, certain areas of the industry where there are carbon emissions that are kind of unavoidable, such as shipping. Grind is looking towards certain things that we can do to help offset carbon emissions. A couple of things straight away. We had a decent-sized investment recently, and for the near future, we are looking towards becoming a B Corp, which is basically a certified, it's a certification that a business can get to prove that they're using green practices and being as sustainable as possible as a business. And it's something you have to keep up year in, year out. And then, as well as that, we're also looking towards creating a charitable foundation. This is a very new thing, hasn't been announced yet, but it's something that it's in the pipeline basically, where we'll take some of our profit and then hopefully some of that profit will go towards carbon offsetting in different areas of the industry, so farming and shipping and things like that.
Yeah, we're very excited about this charitable foundation. We're just looking at how best to use the money at the moment, because we don't want to just, build a well somewhere and not really know why we're doing it. We want to do it intelligently. Not that building wells is a bad thing, but sometimes there's better ways to use money, and we just want to
definitely
do the right thing.
Okay, all right, great. So the coffee beans get put on a lower carbon emitting ship to England, and then they make it here to the grind roastery. And what happens next?
Just to touch on one thing, that one of the good things about having such a big space is that we can actually get our shipping containers basically straight from the dock and brought straight here to the roastery, which in a smaller space is a little bit more difficult. It might need to go to a warehouse somewhere beforehand and repackaged and then brought over, whereas we can store a lot more coffee here than previously. Is that right?
Yeah, so we just bring the container straight into the roastery, which is heavy.
Yeah, they're quite big.
It's like 320 60-kilogram bags. It's like
that's a lot.
10 CrossFit classes
I'm American,
in one.
So sometimes I have to think about it in pounds.
Oh yeah,
it's a lot.
we're metric here, kind of. So we bring all that in here, which just reduces the miles that the coffee has to do once it's in England.
And how does it come? Like in those coffee bags up there?
Yeah.
On the
so
pallets.
You can see they're on pallets. We put them on those pallets. They come literally in a shipping container, loose, the bags. And yeah, it's our job to put them in there. We're getting a lot coming in the next couple of weeks. If anyone fancies a workout, hit me up. Come and help out.
Okay, amazing. And so they're brought to the roastery and you have to roast them.
Yep.
I'm guessing that's what this amazing machine behind us is.
Yeah, this is a beautiful coffee roaster. It was amazing when we grew to the point where we needed a bigger one. I was like a child, like, oh, I can get what I want. But I've always loved these ones. They're German made. They're called Probat, the company. And they've been around since the 19th century, I believe.
Oh, wow.
They've got a museum in Germany with all their old roasters. It's very geeky for me. I love it. So this machine is essentially a really old design, but with a lot of modern tech. So the best of both worlds, we think, which is how we've been talking a bit about sustainability and trying to use old sustainable practices, but in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good example of that. It's made out of cast iron. It's really good at retaining heat and efficiently roasting coffee beans, and it also tastes great.
Yeah.
And produces no smoke, or it takes the smoke out of the roasting process. Is that correct?
Yeah, it basically produces a very clean smoke exhaust. Just like the shipping, there's always an emission that comes from certain parts of this process, but it's a very efficient one.
Yeah. And then obviously once it's roasted in the roaster, it then goes over to the packaging area. And something that Grind are really striving towards at the moment is sustainable packaging. So for example, our at-home range, so the coffee that we sell to customers at home, we've completely removed all plastic from all packaging for our at-home range products. So that's something that's really great, and it took a lot of work, but we managed to get there. All of our packaging is 100% compostable. All of the coffee bags uses no tin lining like some coffee bags do. And even the coffee pods that you put in your Nespresso machine are 100% compostable as well. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, I have definitely noticed that sometimes I will pick up a coffee product and it feels and it looks not plastic, but then I'll find that maybe there is like a plastic lining or like a plastic valve or something, which really kind of hinders my ability to recycle it responsibly.
The valves on coffee bags are actually quite a big thing. Like, it's quite difficult to get fully recyclable or fully compostable valves on your coffee bags, but even the valves on our bags are fully compostable. So we're actually pretty proud of that at the moment.
Amazing. And so compostable, they're like at-home compostable, like you can stick them in the
you can put your coffee pods straight into a compostable food bin basically, and it will break down.
We're really proud of this. I don't think a lot of people realize quite how much work it takes to become compostable. All the packing machinery that we have, and pretty much the entire world of packaging, is based on plastic, because plastic's really easy to work with. Foil is really easy to work with. They seal well. They have really good barriers against oxygen, and
it's also cheaper as well to use plastic. So something about our coffee bags is we spend something like 5 times more than we would if we used plastic packaging, just to be as green as possible, basically, with our packaging. So it's not always about making as much profit as possible. Sometimes it's about other things such as sustainability.
Yeah. Amazing. I think that you guys are starting to fit into this like category of business that I've been, learning more about, which are social enterprises that happen to make coffee, which is really good.
Yeah, we're really proud of what we're doing, but we're also really aware that there's a whole lot more we need to be doing. You can see the trends, like we've all seen the stats and the data, and we need to do a lot more. And we're at the early part of our journey, but we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we've got the coffee. We've packaged it here at the Grind Roastery, and now it's getting to Soho House. I've seen outside that you guys have some really nifty little pink vans that say 100% electric on it.
They're really cute.
Yeah. And so do you guys just drop coffee deliveries all over London in those?
Yeah, so we have a full fleet of electric vans that we deliver all the coffee around London with. At the moment, the vans can't go far enough to deliver to Babington House or Soho Farmhouse, sadly. But we are looking at it. We're working on getting one that can handle that journey.
Sure. And us too, we are taking your coffee and putting it in places in North America, in Europe, and Asia. And more we're pushing our distributors, our logistics, our transporter teams to find lower carbon emitting options for us.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's funny, we're all at the very beginning of this journey. I think you're seeing battery technology and rechargeable batteries is just getting so much better every year. Just like compostable packaging is getting better and better. But we're at the early stages.
Yeah.
We're dial-up internet right now.
Dial-up internet. Dial-up sustainability.
Yeah.
I definitely agree that it takes a lot of different players in the industry, creating demand for more sustainable solutions to help us get, results and options from other parts of the industries.
Yeah.
So that we can be a more sustainable ecosystem.
And I think you're seeing that with the big players, shouldn't name any big players in the coffee industry right now, but you definitely see them being dragged towards doing more sustainable things and more high quality flavor things as well, just because there's clearly a demand for it.
Yeah.
And we like to think we're driving that demand a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, when we look at when your coffee is actually in our houses, right, the amount of more conscious decisions that our members and their guests are making around the coffee they want and the things like the milk they want. I mean, the amount of oat milk we've sold versus dairy same time a few years ago is just
And it's not just that Grind. I think that's just throughout the coffee industry. Oat milk, I mean, it's kind of strange because quite a few years ago oat milk was a very small thing, and all of a sudden it's become by far the most popular milk alternative, and we're at a point where almost 50% of our drinks being sold are actually oat milk drinks, which is, that hasn't happened before. But that's great in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, it tastes good too.
It does. Yeah.
What are some other things that members and coffee drinkers can consider when it comes to making more ethical choices around their morning cup or afternoon cup, if you're me?
Yeah. I think from a consumer standpoint, you can speak from two different standpoints, but you can talk as a business or as a consumer. From a consumer standpoint, I think we're in a period of time now where we have more access to information than we ever did before, and with that comes the ability to research what you're consuming, basically. So as a consumer, as a coffee consumer, I'd recommend just doing a bit of research into what you're buying, basically. Instead of just going to the supermarket and picking up what's on the shelf, maybe just hop on Google, do a little bit of research about the company that you're buying from. Instead of getting some milk from the supermarket, you could look at your local dairy farm and look into their sustainability practices and how well they're doing. You could consider switching over to non-dairy milks, which a lot of people have done now. And then from a business standpoint, cafes and restaurants, there's all kinds of practices that baristas and people, when they're actually behind the bar, can do. Things from, serving tap water, something as simple as that, rather than, selling bottled water. Using eco modes on your coffee machines, reusing wet coffee waste. So you can actually, there's lots of different purposes for wet coffee waste, such as compost. People use it for skincare. There are companies that take it and create things like shoes or even furniture. And then even your dried coffee waste. So coffee waste, literal coffee grounds that haven't been used. Instead of chucking it in the bin, the barista could keep it in a container and take it home and use it in their French press. It's all about these little things rather than, the big picture sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And actually, I have to shout this out, but we recently did the Soho House Design Prize for the first time this year, and one of the finalists had a coffee table made out of coffee grounds.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
I love this idea.
You guys can find it on sohohouse.com/house-foundations.
Yeah.
Nice link.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Well, guys, I mean, I am really glad that we're partnered up with you. And, as we as a business become more and more, are driving towards a more and more sustainable solution to creating a Soho House that our members and guests know and love. It's really great to know that you guys are working on it as well. You've done a lot of work, and you can see that there's a, path to make better choices moving forward. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. Any last things you guys want to shout out or mention?
I think just a big thank you to Soho House as well. The fact that they're choosing Grind. It's great to work with you guys. And I hope you're all enjoying our coffee as well.
Yeah, I just would say that if there's anything you want to challenge us with, that's what we want to be, is challenged to be more sustainable. So email us, email in and just...
What's the email?
You can email me, actually. Email me personally, because I'm always keen to know. It's howard@grind.co.uk.
Very official.
And
Rudy@grind.co.uk. It's RUDI.
Sure. And what's your Instagram? Not yours personally, Grind's.
Oh, it's just @grind. I was like, mine? I don't even know how to spell mine.
All right, amazing. Well, thanks so much, guys, for having us. And time for a cup of coffee.
I can't wait.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thanks.